I'm executing.
Good morning from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where teams of flight controllers are on console at this hour, monitoring the progress of a Russian Progress resupply vehicle to a docking with the International Space Station's Zvezda service module just 49 minutes from now.
What about transmission?
Here in the flight control room, the U.S. team of flight controllers at this hour is led by Flight Director Sally Davis, who is the second from the right on your screen. She is joined on console by spacecraft communicator Ken Ham in the white shirt on the left side of your screen, the U.S. ISS Capcom, who will be speaking directly to the crew if required throughout the course of today's operations. This is basically a Russian operation today, governed by the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center, located in Korolyov outside of Moscow. They are in charge of Progress operations and have been since the launch of this Progress vehicle from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on Sunday morning. The Progress is under the control of an automated computer system. It is currently about 7,000 meters away from a docking with the International Space Station. So far, everything has gone extremely smoothly, and the Progress is in great shape, heading for a link-up with the station. Progress and the station are currently tracking over the southern Pacific Ocean, about to cross the southern coast of South America, and begin a southwest to northeasterly swing that will carry the two craft across the equator a short time from now, both flying in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator at an altitude of 240 statute miles. This Progress resupply ship, the 10th in a series of such cargo ships that arrive periodically at the station to provide a resupply capability for the residents on board the International Space Station. Progress again was launched on Sunday from Baikonur on its two-day journey to the station and for its docking with the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. That's coming up at about 8:50 Central Time this morning. This Progress is loaded with about a ton of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 6 crew on board the International Space Station. As we look at live downlink television from the station itself, the station and the Progress having recently moved into an orbital sunrise over the southern Pacific Ocean. The Progress is loaded, amongst other things, with servicing items for the Zarya control module, a fan, dust collector, a fungostat kit, and a sample tube kit, a power supply system spares, including a storage battery, voltage and current stabilizer, batteries for the Russian Orlan spacesuits, for upcoming spacewalks that may be conducted out of the Russian segment of the International Space Station, a variety of scientific payloads, consumables and spares for life support systems on board the station, 3 new fire extinguishers for the station and as part of the routine swap out of that equipment, in-flight maintenance items for the Vozduk system, that's the carbon dioxide removal system for the Russian segment of the International Space Station, as well as maintenance items that are typical items for the air conditioning and thermal control systems on board the International Space Station. Also prominent in the manifest on board the Progress are spares for the microgravity science glove box for the Destiny Laboratory of the International Space Station, which ceased operations back in November, shortly before the arrival of the Expedition 6 crew on board the station. That microgravity science glove box has been dormant since November because of the failure of a power system. Those parts, once received on board, once hatches are opened between the Progress and the International Space Station, will be unloaded by ISS Science Officer Don Pettit, who will get right to work tomorrow installing the new replacement parts for the microgravity science glove box, and that apparatus then will be placed back into service to accommodate all of the science activities for the remainder of this Expedition 6 increment, which clearly will be extended now with this crew on orbit, expecting to spend more time on orbit than had been originally planned. Today is the 73rd day in space for Expedition 6 Commander Ken Bowersox, Flight Engineer Nikolai Budarin, and ISS Science Officer Don Pettit, their 71st day on board the International Space Station. They were awakened, as is the typical wake-up call, at midnight Central Time this morning. They conducted routine maintenance of station systems, exercise periods. They conducted some scientific operations throughout the course of the early morning hours this morning before focusing their attention now on the docking of the Progress vehicle. Nikolai Budarin is in the Zvezda service module, ready to assume control of manual operations of guiding the Progress in for a docking, should that be required. That would only be required in the event of a failure of the automated docking system on board the Progress, which at this point is functioning perfectly, auto-targeting the Progress for a link-up to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module just 44 minutes from now. Once the Progress makes contact and capture with the docking port at the aft end of the Zvezda service module, hooks and latches will engage to form a tight seal between the two vehicles. There will be leak checks conducted throughout the late morning time frame this morning before the opening of the hatch between the Progress and the service module itself. That's expected at around 1 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. There are no plans to unload the Progress today. The crew will be busy deactivating Progress systems before they begin their 8.5-hour sleep period at 3:30 Central Time this afternoon. The actual unloading of the Progress will begin in earnest tomorrow morning, primarily by the 3 crew members on board. And again, one of the first items to be unloaded will be those replacement parts for the microgravity science glove box, and the beginning of the installation of those new components by Don Pettit throughout the course of the day on Wednesday.
Is working.
The visiting vehicle officer, known as the VVO here in the flight control room, Tom Erkenswick, reporting back to Flight Director Sally Davis that the Progress has begun the first of 3 braking maneuvers, part of the automated sequence of events that will enable the Progress to arrive at a station-keeping position at 8:29 Central Time this morning, several hundred meters away from the International Space Station's Zvezda service module. That will be about a 10-minute station-keeping period, at which time the Russian flight controllers, led by their Chief Flight Director Vladimir Solovyov, will make an assessment of the systems on board the Progress, the alignment of the Progress docking mechanism to the docking port at the aft end of the Zvezda service module before the automated docking sequence will reinitiate an approach on the final approach for docking at 8:41 Central Time this morning. Again, the docking expected at 8:50 Central Time this morning.
And the opposite direction is working. Okay. We have received the acknowledgement for all of them. Yes, and I confirm the same. I've got the acknowledgement. BPS is an initial. Copy. BPS is an initial. Copy. Send the command. Excellent. And Toro is an active standby. Copy. What about the quality of the TV image? I see only the course data. Now the image is somewhat stable. But the middle of the image is too exposed, it's too light. I can see the station, and I can see the data from the course system very well. That's all. Are you getting the image on the ground? Yes, we are, but the quality is a little bit worse than yours. Well, I can tell you that I can see the data from the course very well. I'm seeing especially on the lower bottom. But I cannot see anything pertaining to capture. It's too exposed, too light. Yes, it's too light. I cannot.
You're listening to the translation, the English translation of the discussions ongoing between the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow, and flight engineer Nikolai Budarin, who is inside the Zvezda service module, monitoring the approach of the Progress to the ISS's Zvezda service module, now less than 2,000 meters separating the two craft.
The image is not stable. Now I'm getting it back. Range is 1.7 and range rate is 5. Copy.
This an image relayed from the Progress 10 resupply ship through U.S. communications assets on board the International Space Station. This view from the external camera, the black and white camera on the outside of the Progress resupply vehicle, showing the International Space Station. That image will become more fine-tuned as the approach of the Progress brings it closer and closer for its docking, now 1,500 meters, separating the two craft, or about 39 minutes away from contact and capture.
Now it's going to the right. Now we're turning to the right, yes, to perform the burn. That was beautiful, just beautiful.
The International Space Station and the Progress resupply vehicle skirting up the east coast of South America, soon to cross the equator. Again, all systems functioning perfectly on board both the station and the Progress. Its automated computers honed in on a link up to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module just 38 minutes from now. The supplies being brought to the Expedition 6 crew today by the Progress cargo ship will enable, if required, the Expedition 6 crew to have all the consumables it needs to remain aloft on board the station through the late June, early July timeframe, if that is the decision made by the International Space Station program to do so. No decisions have been made at this point to extend the Expedition 6 crew beyond its current increment plan, although it is clear that there will be some additional time spent on orbit for Ken Bowersox, Nikolai Budarin, and Don Pettit, who said pre-launch that they could spend as much time on orbit as would be required, depending on circumstances that would befall them once aboard the International Space Station.
Now we're performing the back maneuver. Can you see it, Nikolai, now? Yes, the image is good. And I see. I can see the range rate is 3.5 and the range is 950. Well, I anticipate that our image we're getting on the ground is a little bit worse than yours. Yes, I'm just commenting on what I see on the display.
Again, this image from black and white cameras on the exterior of the Progress 10 spacecraft as it heads toward a docking with the International Space Station. This view of the station overlaid on that image, as is typically the case, is navigational data showing the range to the International Space Station, the rate of closure. This data useful for the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center as they analyze the rate of Progress's closure based on its automated computer program that brings it into an automated docking to the station itself. Now just 700 meters separating the two spacecraft, everything on track for an on-time link-up. The Progress, once it arrives in the vicinity of the International Space Station about 6 minutes from now, will begin, based on its automated program, a fly-around that will enable the Progress to move from an area just adjacent to and parallel to the Destiny laboratory of the International Space Station to a point directly behind the Zvezda service module for alignment to the aft docking port of Zvezda.
Why? Okay, we have a drop in Q-band. We are not seeing anything, so please comment on what you see. Copy. I'll do that. Range is 560. Range rate is 2. I'm still confirming the acquisition. Copy.
Дальность 500, скорость 1,9.
501.9.
Принято.
Copy.
Дальность 450, скорость 1,36.
Range is 450. Range rate is 136. And the retrograde is along -y. And the series is 1. Copy.
Сейчас постепенно к облету подходим.
Okay, now we are slowly coming to the fly round.
Дальность 408, скорость 1,26.
Range is 408 and range rate is 1.26.
As you hear from the translation from the Russian Flight Control Team, the Progress resupply ship now around 400 meters away from its docking to the International Space Station, closing at a rate of somewhat less than 2 meters per second. At the time of the actual link-up of the Progress to the aft docking port of Zvezda, the spacecraft, the Progress cargo ship, will be moving at a glacial speed of about 0.2 of a foot per second for the proper rate at contact and capture.
Okay, no emergency. Everything is nominal. Nikolai, there was a drop in comm. We couldn't copy what you were saying before.
Again, the ton of supplies being brought up for the Expedition 6 crew on board the International Space Station will enable them, if required, to have enough consumables on board to remain aboard the station through late June or early July, although no decision to that effect has been made by NASA, the international partners, and the International Space Station program. There is a Soyuz TMA spacecraft that is scheduled to be launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on April 26th that would ferry a brand new Soyuz return craft, that is the piloted craft, to the International Space Station. The Soyuz being flown up in late April to provide an assured crew return capability. There is a Soyuz that is currently docked to the Russian Pirs docking compartment at the International Space Station, should it be required for the Expedition 6 crew to come home prior to the rotation of a brand new Soyuz that, again, will be linked up to the station, providing continuous crew return capability should that be necessary for the crew on board the International Space Station. The next Progress, the Progress 11 spacecraft, is scheduled to be launched from Baikonur in the early to mid-June timeframe. And again, the Progress cargo ships launched periodically per programmatic requirements from the International Space Station's program office to provide supplies and the resupply of necessary food, fuel, and other necessities and consumables on board the complex.
The fly round is continuing, and 270 and 0.59. Copy. .246 and the range rate is 038. Copy. No emergency, no no comment. The TV image is stable. Range is 234 and range rate is 0.2. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston, 29 minutes away from the anticipated docking of the Progress cargo ship, the Progress 10, to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module of the International Space Station. Everything going very smoothly. The automated docking sequence, the approach of the Progress governed by onboard computers, going very smoothly with no problems reported. And Flight Director Sally Davis here in the Space Station Flight Control Room, now being told by the visiting vehicle officer, the VVO as he is called, confirming that the Progress has now begun its fly-around to maneuver to a point directly adjacent from the Destiny Laboratory of the International Space Station to the rear, if you will, of the Zvezda service module for alignment for final approach and link-up. That fly-around now underway.
I've lost the image. Now it's 214 and 0.12. The fly around continues, and there is still an acquisition of signal. And everything else is nominal, right? Can you repeat what you've just said? And the fly around is along the plus X axis, yes. Everything is nominal. Range is 217 and range rate is 0.1. No emergency, no common. Copy.
This view now from the Progress 10's external cameras, showing a great view of the International Space Station. At the very top of your screen is the Soyuz TMA crew craft, the piloted craft that is docked to the Pirs docking compartment of the International Space Station. You can see at the bottom of your screen the huge U.S. solar arrays fully extended from the P6 solar array truss structure and the other components of the station. The Progress continuing its fly around to properly align itself to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module, now just 200 meters away from its docking to the ISS.
Record the S1 camera. I think it's going to have a good view of the docking.
It's going quite fast.
And Don, that's no problem. Have fun. In fact,
Range is 211 and the range rate is 0.1.
Helping monitor things. No problem, Don. We'll put it in work. You can see the Progress right now on the S1 camera.
You can see in this view from the external camera on the starboard 1 or S1 truss of the International Space Station on the very right side of your screen, that is the Progress resupply craft, currently aligning itself to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. The Zvezda is currently masked, if you will, behind that solar array, one of the solar arrays on the service module itself. And again, at the top left portion of your screen, the Soyuz TMA spacecraft, which arrived at the International Space Station at the beginning of November by a taxi crew that brought that assured crew return vehicle to the International Space Station. It is currently docked to the Pirs docking compartment. On the very left side of your screen, before we lost that image, was the Zarya control module, the first component of the International Space Station that was launched back on November 20th, 1998.
There was drop in com, Nikolai. We couldn't copy what you were saying. Yes. I was losing gas, and now it's restored.
Принято. 0.7, 0.7, 120 единица, единица, точка 7, единица, 20 единица. Принято.
It's 1.7 and 1001.
97, скорость 3.
Range is 197 and the range rate is 0.3. Copy.
Да, облетать немного осталось, Николай.
What about fly around? How much is left?
Да, облететь градусов 20.
I would say 20 to 15 degrees. So I cannot see it in relation to the station because it goes around the antenna now on the solar and the solar rays. So it's not as visible. So I'm getting the data from the course. It's 180 and 0.3.
Принято, есть закон. Словится единичка, точка 7120 единица. Принято.
And the parameter is 171001.
Так, и зависание дальность 170 метров. Скорость 0. Принято, есть зависание. 0. Единичка. Ясно, Николай.
We are station keeping at 170 and range rate.
Russian flight controllers confirming that station keeping of the Progress 10 vehicle has now begun at a range of 170 meters, right on the mark. This will be about a 10-minute procedure before the onboard computers will command the Progress to resume its final approach for a docking to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module, docking scheduled just under 22 minutes from now.
Ну, причальный у нас будет видно в зоне связи. Еще 8,5 минут до
Well, rendezvous will be command will be and approach command will be given when we have a compass. It will be in about 8.5 minutes.
Again, the timeline for today, once the docking is completed and hooks and latches are engaged to form a tight seal between the two vehicles, the crew will conduct a leak check at the interface between the Zvezda service module and the Progress itself before opening the hatches between the ISS and the Progress around 1 o'clock Central Time this afternoon. There will be no unloading of any supplies from the Progress today. That will be left to the crew to do tomorrow, to begin the process of unloading tomorrow. Nikolai Budarin, the Russian cosmonaut, who's the flight engineer in charge of Russian segment operations on board the station, will spend the afternoon deactivating Progress systems, shutting down all of its components, and putting it in a caretaker mode, if you will, while it remains attached for its tenure to have its fuel interconnected for the Zvezda engines for reboost capability for the International Space Station when required on a periodic basis. The crew will begin its 8.5-hour sleep period at about 3:30 Central Time this afternoon, and once awakened at midnight Central Time tonight to begin tomorrow's activities. That will focus on the unloading of supplies from the Progress And for Don Pettit, he will dig in to the replacement parts for the microgravity science glove box, moving those components from the Progress to the Destiny laboratory, where he will begin to install all of that equipment. And by the end of the day on Wednesday, if all goes as planned, the microgravity science glove box should have been tested and back in operation, soon to resume science operations for all of its scientific agenda for the rest of the Expedition 6 increment.
Как изображение?
Nikolai, are you getting the image? Is it of good quality? Yes, the image is of good quality. And the range is 158, and we're station keeping.
Солнышко сейчас сверху подсвечивает, да, стыковочный узел еще?
I understand the sun is above you. It's shining at the docking assembly. Yes, it is. Yes.
Стыковочный узел в правом нижнем углу. ВКО.
And the docking assembly is on the right, on the bottom of the display.
Пока связь нормальная, напоминаю. Через 25 у нас зона УКВ начинается. Нам надо будет перейти на линию связи 2 с линии связи 1.
Just a reminder, Nikolai, while we have good comm, that we will have a compass coming up, and you'll have to switch to a second control communication panel at 1437. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston, the Progress 10 continuing its pre-programmed station keeping about 170 meters or so away from the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. This, again, an opportunity for Russian flight controllers to take a look at the telemetry being received from the Progress before the automated computers on board the cargo craft resume a final approach for link-up to Zvezda. That that series of beeps indicative of the fact that the International Space Station is about to pass within range of Russian ground stations. That also means that we should be acquiring our television signal back from the black and white camera on the exterior of the Progress resupply craft a short time from now. We should have television from that black and white camera all the way through contact and capture.
Nikolai, we have 1 minute prior to the UKV compass. Is everything okay? No emergency? Yes. And 168 is the range right now, and I've selected the display 44. Copy. Nikolai, let's switch to UKV. Copy.
The International Space Station now within range of ground station coverage at the Shelkova ground station, a series of ground stations stretching throughout the Russian Republic. We should be getting our television signal from the Progress 10 spacecraft a short time from now.
Okay, 38:30, and the docking assembly will be in the middle. Copy.
The aft docking port of the Zvezda service module was vacated on Saturday through the undocking of the previous Progress craft that had been linked up to the station since June. That set the stage for the launch of the Progress 10 vehicle from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. That occurred on Sunday at 6:59 a.m. Central Time. 9 minutes later, the Progress arrived on orbit in good shape. Orbital insertion was confirmed. All of its solar arrays and navigational antennas were deployed on time, setting the stage for the two-day rendezvous operations that will be culminating a short time from now with the Progress's link up to the station.
Nikolai, we are getting the picture, but it's not a very good quality.
And now the view from the black and white camera on the Progress vehicle as the Progress aligns itself to the aft docking port of Zvezda. That picture should lock up and improve momentarily.
And the range is 136.
You can see on the lower left-hand portion of your screen the Soyuz TMA vehicle that is docked to the Pirs docking compartment on the Russian segment on the Zvezda service module itself. That Soyuz vehicle providing assured crew return capability from the International Space Station. You're looking right up the back of the docking port of the Zvezda itself.
Do you see the display? Yes, Nikolai, we are getting the display. The TV image is stable. We can see it. That's good.
The automated Coors rendezvous antenna on the Progress vehicle is sending radio beacon information back and forth to similar equipment on Zvezda to provide the automated alignment that is required before the docking can occur. Everything going very smoothly with docking scheduled about 10 minutes from now.
Okay, in 30 seconds, we'll give you a go for final approach. Copy. The image is stable and clear. The same here.
.134 meters separating the Progress from its docking port on the aft end of the Russian segment of the International Space Station's Zvezda module, closing at a rate of about 0.3 of a foot per second. Again, on the lower left-hand portion of your screen, a good view of the Soyuz TMA vehicle that arrived at the station in early November, flown to the station by a Russian European taxi crew.
25 and the range rate is 0.68, copy.
That Soyuz vehicle always attached to the International Space Station to provide a shore crew return capability for the residents on board. For Ken Bowersox, Nikolai Budarin, and Don Pettit, this is their 73rd day in space, their 71st day on board the complex.
The docking lights should be on, and I think we'll be getting out of the shuttle at 14:46. Copy. Range is 97. Copy.
97 meters away. Good range and range rate. The automated docking sequence performing like a charm. Again, the ton of supplies being brought on the Progress to the International Space Station provides all the consumables that the current crew on board needs to remain aloft till the late June, early July timeframe if required. Another Progress is due to be launched in June from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, about a month and a half after the next launch of the new Soyuz return vehicle that is planned for the late April timeframe.
Range is 68. Copy.
Once the docking is confirmed and all of the hooks and latches are fully engaged to provide a tight seal between the two craft, the crew on board will perform leak checks between the Zvezda module and the newly arrived Progress before opening the hatch to the Progress itself at about 1 o'clock Central Time this afternoon. Late this afternoon, the Progress systems will be deactivated by flight engineer Nikolai Budarin. The Progress itself due to be unloaded by the crew tomorrow, including the parts for the microgravity science glove box in the Destiny laboratory. Don Pettit will dig into all of those components, and by the end of the day Wednesday, if all goes as planned, all of the new components should have been installed in the glove box, coaxing it back into service after it experienced a power failure back in November.
Still seeing the display.
45 meters now from docking, the Progress closing in at a rate of about 0.2 of a meter per second.
The target, and actually NKO2 has a better image than here. Copy. 39 meters and 0.3 is the range rate. And Nicola, do you remember when we are at 30 meters range, we'll have to activate the plus X axis maneuver? Copy.
That maneuver being described in translation from the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center outside Moscow, a pre-programmed maneuver by the Progress one more fine-tuning maneuver to properly align the forward docking mechanism of the Progress itself with the docking port that you're looking at just above the center of the crosshairs in this image from the Progress 10 vehicle.
The image is too exposed. It's too light. Even though if we look at the forecast, it says 48. The estimate is 48, but it's less. Okay, now we're getting closer. 41 meter. 40.
You can see how the Corps' navigational antenna system is basically searching for the proper alignment. This a tried and true system by the Russians for their automated docking sequences, both for Progress as well as piloted Soyuz vehicles.
meters.
30 meters. Okay, I'm sending the command. Copy. Okay, send that command.
One final maneuver being programmed into the Progress's computers for a final alignment of the docking mechanism.
Is everything nominal? Yes, everything is nominal.
The crosshairs of the Progress that you see in this television image from the external black and white camera on the cargo ship will align with that crosshair docking target at the bottom of the aft port of the Zvezda service module. You can see it coming into alignment right now.
I think I noticed a roll, but I think it's acceptable. It's within the limits.
Less than 20 meters separating the two craft.
Okay, all the targets, all the crosses are in place. Copy.
Russian flight controllers reporting perfect alignment between the two docking mechanisms. Flight controllers standing by for contact and capture.
Is everything within the limits so far? Yes, it is. Everything is nominal. Excellent. One degree capture. We've got capture.
Docking confirmed at 8:49 a.m. Central Time over Central Asia. The Progress 10 has arrived safely and successfully at the International Space Station.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Nikolai, page 23 is left.
We will be standing by now for the initiation of the hookup of all of the hooks and latches to form a tight seal between the two craft. Again, docking occurred over Central Asia at 8:49 a.m. Central Time, completing a flawless two-day rendezvous for the Progress 10 after its launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan back on Sunday morning. The Progress now at the station. Later this afternoon, hatches will be opened between the Zvezda service module and the Progress, and tomorrow the crew will begin to unload a ton of food and supplies that will enable the Expedition 6 crew members Ken Bowersox, Nikolai Budarin, and Don Pettit to remain on board the International Space Station if required, all the way into the late June, early July time frame.
RO mode is not on. TV to be deactivated. TV is off. Copy. BPS is in initial. Copy. I deactivate the command transmission capabilities. Commands are off. The light for the backup control loop is on. I'm deactivating it right now. Copy.
Flight Director Sally Davis being told by the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control that the docking probe on the Progress is currently being retracted as planned. That will set up the initiation of the latching of all of the hooks and latches between the two vehicles.
Power is off. Copy. And COM line 3 is off. And the COM panel 1 transmission is off. TV deactivation command off. Concur.
Later today on board the International Space Station, Bowersox, Budarin, and Pettit will pay a private tribute to the memory of Columbia's astronauts at around the same time of the memorial service that is planned here at the Johnson Space Center for Columbia's crew members, to be attended by President Bush and Mrs. Bush and NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe. Again, the crew on board the International Space Station planning their own private commemoration to Columbia's astronauts later today on board the station. Details of that will remain a private matter for the crew on board the station. They will also be receiving an audio feed of the memorial service that will be radioed up to them on the space-to-ground communications channels from Mission Control here in Houston, so they can have an opportunity to reflect at the midday time frame as the memorial service is taking place for Columbia's crew.
Okay, and we deactivate the backup line for UKV 1. And I deactivate the duplex UKV 2 line. Yes, I can see you guys are celebrating over there. I can hear a lot of noise coming from the ground. Yes, we're happy here. UKV backup line is off. Okay, and UKV 2 in duplex mode is off. Copy. To deactivation. Send the command, copy.
To recap, flawless rendezvous and docking for the Progress 10 resupply ship to the International Space Station. Link up to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module occurring on time at 8:49 a.m. Central Time this morning. As the two craft, the Progress and the International Space Station, flew 240 statute miles over Central Asia. On board the Progress, a ton of food, fuel, and supplies, for the Expedition 6 crew, and replacement parts for a critical science facility, the microgravity science glove box in the Destiny Laboratory. Those supplies to be unloaded by the crew tomorrow. Hatches will be opened between the International Space Station and the Progress cargo ship later today.
Guys, thank you so much. We are completing these operations, and this Progress vehicle is very important to us. You understand that? Yes, thank you. Nikolai, what else? Well, UKV compass is coming to an end. Let's switch and talk about the rest of the program. Moscow station. Nikolai, loud and clear on SG1. Halas, loud and clear. Well, let's talk. After our conversation, you can put the comm panel in neutral state and talk to us from comm panel number 3. Copy. As for the leak check, you'll do it on our go. Now you'll have to finish the SVP mode. After we inhibit the thrusters, it'll be at about 1640. What did you say? Repeat the times. 1640, 1640, copy. Then we'll perform the leak check. And there is one peculiarity. It is important that we perform the leak check over the ground side. And there'll be a compass from 1748 to 1803. It is important for you to open the KVD Berpeka.
This is Mission Control Houston standing by now for confirmation of hooks and latches engaging to form a tight seal between the newly arrived Progress and the docking mechanism at the aft port of the Zvezda service module. Again, later today, the crew on board the International Space Station will be paying a private tribute to Columbia's astronauts around the same time as the memorial ceremony here at the Johnson Space Center that will be conducted at noon Central Time and broadcast on NASA television. The audio from that ceremony will be radioed up to the crew on board the International Space Station so it can hear the ceremony as it is taking place. President Bush and Mrs. Bush and NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe among the invited guests for that ceremony that will be broadcast on NASA television at noon Central Time today.
Which would bring the two volumes together, and then we'll perform the necessary activities for the thrusters, because then we'll be busy with other activities as well. Okay. Yes, the Progress is here. Excellent.
This is a videotape replay of the approach of the Progress. A little bit difficult to see. You can see the Soyuz TMA return craft on the left side of your screen. Progress's approach for its docking a few minutes ago to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module, currently masked behind that sun glint. This is again a videotape replay, a video recorded on board that is being downlinked for flight controllers to have an opportunity to view. And flight controllers here in Mission Control now confirming that hooks and latches are fully engaged between the newly arrived Progress 10 spacecraft, the cargo ship, and the International Space Station. So the Progress is now firmly latched to the International Space Station, where it will remain until at least June, when the next Progress resupply ship is scheduled to be launched. Again, a flawless approach and docking by the Progress 10 spacecraft to the International Space Station today, docking occurring on time at 8:49 a.m. Central Time as the two craft flew over Central Asia. This is Mission Control Houston. One more reminder, a programming note coming up in 3 hours at noon Central Time. The memorial ceremony here at the Johnson Space Center for Columbia's astronauts to be attended by President Bush and Mrs. Bush and NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe. That memorial ceremony to be broadcast on NASA television beginning at noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 hours from now. To recap, the Progress 10 resupply ship, loaded with a ton of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 6 crew, Ken Bowersox, Nikolai Budarin, and Don Pettit, now firmly attached to the International Space Station following a successful 2 days from launch at the Baikonur Cosmodrome on Sunday morning to its docking at 8:49 a.m. Central Time just a few minutes ago. The crew will begin to conduct leak checks in the interface of the two docking mechanisms between the Progress and the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module before opening the hatches between the station and the Progress craft at about 1 o'clock Central Time this afternoon. The unloading of all of that gear, all of the food and supplies on board the Progress cargo ship will get underway in earnest tomorrow by the Expedition 6 crew, Bowersox, Budarin, and Pettit, sailing smoothly on in their 73rd day in space, their 71st day on board the International Space Station. A good view of the International Space Station from the external camera on the starboard 1 truss. You can see on the far left of your screen the Quest airlock from which U.S. spacewalks are staged out of the U.S. segment of the station. In the middle of the longitudinal axis of the station is the Zarya control module, and the Pirs docking compartment at the very top of your screen mated to it, the Soyuz TMA spacecraft, providing an assured crew return capability for residents on board the orbital outpost. Again, Progress 10 successfully arriving at the International Space Station a few minutes ago, delivering a ton of food, fuel, and supplies to the residents on board the complex. From Mission Control in Houston, this wraps up our Progress 10 docking coverage. Again, a programming note at 12 noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, our coverage from the Johnson Space Center of today's memorial ceremony for Columbia's astronauts. This is Mission Control Houston.